Now we're recording. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah. As you mentioned, we're here today to talk about the Virtual Sculpture Garden, which is a space for 3D art and inspiration. In particular, today's topics are going to cover a little bit of a range, starting with just basically what is 3D art, what is the Virtual Sculpture Garden, and then getting into a little bit of how do we make it, how can you get started. We're hoping to kind of split this up into kind of three sections. There's a bit of a presentation. We're going to walk you through some of these questions, and then hoping to do a little bit of a demo to show you kind of what does it look like to walk through the virtual sculpture garden, as well as what does it look like to make your own 3D art. It's something that everybody can try for free, and it's really fun just to kind of mess around with and explore. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions. I'm really hoping that today will be somewhat informal and conversational. So if you have any questions as we go, feel free to shout them out. And then we'll have dedicated time for it at the end as well. So getting started, we have myself, Trevor Finney, as well as Renee, who's here with us today. And the two team members that could make it are Jonathan Bradley, who is the head of studios and innovative technologies at the University Libraries, and Alice Rogers, who is the head of the media design studio at the University Libraries. We also were very fortunate to have three student workers, two undergrads, Dylan Kraft and Zhang Nguyen. And we also had a grad student, Alex Krasner, help us with the development of this project. So kind of getting into it, what we really mean when we say 3D art is kind of everything that you see here on the right and so much more. These are some common examples that you may have seen. Really, it appears in movies and TV, science visualizations, architecture, fine art, video games, industrial design, such as bikes and cars and chairs, and even fashion. One of my colleagues actually has a 3D printed bow tie, for instance, that he wears for important occasions. And kind of getting into a little bit of how it's made, there's kind of three basic types of 3D modeling. And I think a lot of people, when they think of 3D modeling, they think of something that looks like this, a little scary, lots of numbers, lots of buttons. This is considered hard surface modeling. It's what a lot of people use. And it's called hard surface because you can think about the shapes as these very rigid surfaces that you manipulate with these handles in a kind of 3D space, for want of a better term. There's also something that's much more user-friendly, which we'll get into a little bit later. This is called sculpting, or sometimes soft surface modeling. And this is a lot more like clay. So this is a great intro experience, because if you've ever modeled clay or made a pot, or played with Play-Doh with kids, it's very similar. You just pick it up and then push on it. And the last type is the kind that we're really interested in, which is VR painting. So this is where you take a virtual reality headset. You can see this woman here is holding a controller, and inside the virtual reality headset, you can use the controller to paint brushstrokes in space. So it's this blend of painting and sculpting, and it's a really kind of interesting new field. It's something that the virtual environment studio, when we're back in person and we can really take advantage of that technology, it's something we really hope to explore more of. So kind of getting into a little bit of like, one thing that we love about 3D art is that it's a blend. It's both science and math. You can see here that we have, the way 3D is generated is you have, in the behind the scenes, you have vertices, which are points in space, edges, which are a line that's drawn between each vertice, and then faces, which are rendered between each of those points. And all of those are defined by some basic attributes you can see here on the right, which is your translation. So the point where you are in space, your rotation and your scale. And then so with those numbers, you can create anything. So every Pixar movie, every 3D Disney movie is really nothing more than on the back end, just a series of these numbers that are paired together in very complex relationships. But it's also art. It's fun. It's fun, pretty stuff to look at. And the better the technology gets, the lower the barrier becomes, and the easier it is for students to kind of walk that line between science and art and explore their ideas without having to know all of the specific maths involved behind the scenes. And 3D art is also very interactive. And I'm going to let Renee talk about this slide for a moment.
Sure thing. So on top of working full time, I just finished the MFA Creative Technology program. And the program, my thesis was based on creating an interactive, immersive environment. The theme of it was the honeybees, and the target audience is early learning. And so basically what a child in the ages of grade school, of kindergarten through 3, can go through this maze or this sculpture and really learn what a honeybee is, how they help the environment, the decline of the honeybee, and what they can do. This project is, bless you, this project is actually at the Science Museum of Western Virginia in Roanoke right now. However, that museum is closed to the public, so no one's able to see it. But once it is open to the public, I really suggest, going and seeing it. And yeah, as Trevor said, 3D is interactive, and it could be anything from actually looking at the sculpture to going into virtual reality or any of those other types. So I'm really excited about this project, and I hope that all you guys are able to go. Should I go continue, Trevor?
Launch into it.
Yeah, so going back into 3D, so I really love the idea of creating an immersive environment in 3D animation, a 3D look and feel. And as you could tell from these examples, I created the honeybee using a 3D program. I created this scene of, the hives and what it would look like all on the computer in a 3D environment. So yeah, it was really exciting to start with just a square or a sphere or, a silicone, and just really model it into this 3D space, and was so super excited to actually be able to use these objects. Unfortunately, with time and MFA style, I wasn't able to use these in the actual ending of my thesis. However, I still want to go to the next step and actually create a 3D environment one time in the next near future. I don't know when that will be, but hopefully soon. But as Trevor said, it's easier for anyone to just dabble in it. There's a lot of free programs and a lot of opportunities. And, if you're nervous about actually it being the computer, as also Trevor said, use Play-Doh, use glue, really try and incorporate this 3D object, create an object. And that's what it's really exciting.
Yeah, exactly. On my end, I got into 3D art back in high school. It was actually kind of a trajectory switch for me. I had been on an early high school engineering track, and I realized that if I can just 3D model a robot doing something really cool, I don't need to then go build it. I've already made the robot. And so it really kind of changed this trajectory for me and let me explore my ideas in really fast ways. So right shortly after high school and then through college and a little after, I actually worked for a virtual world company where we built 3D environments and 3D worlds. We worked with colleges and K-12 schools as well as nonprofits. And so I brought that passion with me when I came to Virginia Tech. So now we're now talking about the garden in particular. So we really wanted to, given the fact that the barriers have been lowered in recent years, and 3D has this potential to really allow people to explore all kinds of different ideas and just learn something new and stretch their brain in a creative and science-driven way. We really wanted to create a space where we could all get together and be inspired by that. The grant project that we got was not just to create a space where we can do that, but also to make that scalable. So that was the problem that we were solving with our grant, was how do we make a space where we can host people's 3D artworks, whether that be a 3D sketch that they kind of just work on, or a home that they model for their architecture school. How can we put all this together, let people explore it without having to hire an army of student workers to then manage and create this space on this continued basis. So what we came up with was an environment that is dynamically generated and automatically scales. And basically what that means is there is no person who is creating this environment, what you see here. So all we did was we individually 3D modeled the trees, we 3D modeled the grass, and this little archway that we'll see more of later. And then we just wrote the code to say, now that you have these components, make the garden as big as it needs to be for as much art as we have. So as we continue to get more art, the garden will just automatically grow, adding new trees, new hills, new ponds to fit this ever expanding garden. And that way, you know, we can kind of work on it once and then just focus on getting people excited. So how this got started was started with kind of these two sketches actually. Jonathan Bradley and I were talking about the virtual environment studio and this want to get people excited about 3D and what can we do with this. And we kind of were talking about this idea of making a world like this, making a world that's built out of these little tiles that can kind of get put together like puzzle pieces or Lego blocks. And right around that time, due to the closure of the Virginia Tech campus back in the spring semester, a rapid response grant was put out by ICAT. And the grant said, hey, everybody's being socially distant right now. We can't be together in person. So what do you all have that will allow us to keep people and pull them together? So we thought, hey, this is a perfect timing. This is a really great opportunity to do exactly that, to connect people to the arts during this time where we can't be together physically. So we wrote up we pulled together our team and we wrote up our grant proposal. We submitted that in May and wrote our planning documents and our schedules. And then over the next 3 months, we knocked it out. So by mid-October, we had the project online. And by October, we started doing events like this one to kind of start getting the word out. And we also went to Virginia Tech Science Festival and started working on some tutorial videos to share with people. Before we could get started on the actual modeling of anything, we really had to talk about what we wanted the space to look like. And this meant lots of drawings and digital paintings like what you see here to kind of visualize what could this world even look like. And that was involved a lot of conversations with the team. With Renee, we talked a lot about her background at Moss, and both from the marketing side and from creating an exhibit herself. And what that would kind of mean in this space. We also had a great opportunity to think about what do we want the plant life to look like in this garden. We wanted to be inspired by Virginia, so we have a great collection of rhododendron society materials here at the University Libraries. And Alice Rogers is a highly knowledgeable person in a great many of ways, but in particular, she was very instrumental in helping to kind of narrow down what kind of flora should we be looking at and how can we make that feel a little bit dreamy to fit this in virtual world rather than just try to replicate real life. A lot of thought was spent on planning what the physical space would look like at this welcome center. That was one component for our grant. Was we didn't want to just drop people in the middle of this environment. We wanted them to start somewhere and orient themselves and maybe introduce them to the world. So this will be a space that we will continue to develop. But to start with, we wanted to have a place where visitors would spawn. They would see a little bit of information about their controls, and then go through an early gallery before moving on into the wide open garden. For the development side of things, and this is obviously a bulk of the work, and the vast majority of the grant money went to our student workers to pay them for their great skills in developing through the program Unity is what we used. And these diagrams represent kind of the ways that we were thinking about the planning of the development process. On the left, you see us kind of working out and defining where can you put a sculpture, where should one be able to go. And on the right, you can see this idea of, in the middle, we have that welcome center, which I was talking about from the previous slide. And then we have a minimum garden area. And then this pink part grows to relative to the size of the total number of artworks. And then around the edge, there's a tree line that helps people keep a little contained. So it's not just a blank void past the end of the final sculpture. The development work in Unity, like I said, was a huge component of the project. Here we can see just how busy and complex this work could actually become. And this is just the visual side. So we can see here, we had to account for things that a lot of people don't really think about, which is we have to tell the computer to know where your hands are in virtual space when you're using a VR controller. So we have to actually put those controllers into the Unreal or into the Unity environment. We also have to put in a camera. And in fact, we have to put in multiple cameras. We have to put in one camera if you're viewing the experience from the web. And then we have to put in 2 additional cameras if you're viewing the experience from a VR headset, because you have one camera is each eye. So you need to render them multiple times. So we actually had to have 3 cameras in addition to audio players for the sounds and all of those kinds of things. So in addition to all the complexity of bringing the sculptures in, we had to just set it up for you to even be able to see it. This was really complicated by the fact that none of us were in the same building, as you can imagine. And although I had worked with Jonathan and Atlas in the past, this was actually one of our first collaborative projects with Renee and our new student workers. So we had to very quickly figure out how to work together in a socially distant and virtual capacity. That meant a lot of Google Docs. It meant a lot of Zoom calls like this. And it meant working with a code platform and repository called GitHub, where we could push our code to a central location and then everyone could see it and view it, pull it down, and a communications tool called Slack. You can see here on the right, I think, a fun anecdotal of what the collaborative process kind of meant. After some back and forth between myself and one of the student workers, I created that graphic that we saw on the last slide, just to say, for clarity, this is what we're both talking about, right? Because we don't have the luxury of being able to point or draw on a piece of paper. And then he says, yes, that's what I understood. So, and perfect. So a lot of the diagrams that were made were actually just diagrams so that we could all be on the same page from a distance. One big reason that we had Alice join us was to help us create a soundscape that we wanted to also feel reminiscent of the region. So Alice is a wonderful banjo player and composer. So she actually composed for us an original score that plays on the loop for the virtual sculpture garden to feel inspired by the region. And it's kind of a slow wandering melody. And we'll hear that when we get into the sculpture garden here in just a moment. The next step was outreach. Outreach is certainly a huge component of any project, and we're really just starting to kind of like take a launch of that. Renee, if you want to talk about some of the early outreach and maybe some next steps?
Yeah, please. Sure do. So one of my big tasks in this grant was to do some outreach. And it was, in normal times, it would be like sending a quick email, hey, you want to go and chat? And, you could talk to people face to face, and it would be easier to talk about our project. However, everything was just straight email with hopes that people are actually reading their email, especially in like the June, July, August time right before school started. And so the goal was to really just do a direct email outreach to student organizations, other organizations within the campus, and some community. We did do some social media promotion, and as Trevor said, also promoted via a science festival. Our hope is to our hope is to actually outreach more, through organizations like this, and also through the community, and to open up these sculptures to anyone of any age. It doesn't have to be college students. And so we really want it to be a community-based sculpture garden. And granted, our 3D, Trevor and my 3D experience is big, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be, go in, you could just paint like something really quick in the VR headset, and boom, you have a 3D project that you could actually submit. So we really want to do more community-based events, partnerships with not only Virginia Tech students, but also within K through 12, as well as Radford, and maybe some other universities, and really just reach out also to the alumni, especially in the School of Visual Arts. And as we said, it doesn't just have to be artists. It could be anyone, from engineering to social work to, being a doctor if they want, or even a retiree. If you guys want to actually go out and create and learn something new, you're more than welcome to enter that piece into our sculpture garden.
Yeah, very well said. And so once we've done that outreach, once we've inspired you to try 3D, the next step is getting the artwork into the garden. And that required us to think about the actual ingest process. So that meaning just someone sends us an email or submits the art, how do we get it in? The basic process is someone submits their artwork through a very simple form. Then we have to do, the only manual part of the process is a sculpture check. So the sculpture check just makes sure that A, it's compatible with our technology and we can actually use it. And B, and this is very important because we want this to be very open to the community, we really want it to adhere to the Virginia Tech principles of community. And we want to make sure that it doesn't have gratuitous violence or other maybe more adult-oriented content that would exclude our younger audience members from being able to enjoy the garden. So we have some more language about that on the actual form itself, but we just do some of those basic checks. After that, we transfer the file to an asset bundle that we use to generate the world. Once the world has noticed that there's new assets in it, it'll create the new terrain. And the sculptures are then the program looks for an optimal place to put the sculpture and then places it in the world and creates the new build. And then that is automatically updated on the library servers where the virtual sculpture garden is hosted. So as you come back in the future to check, you don't have to re-download a new thing. You don't have to do anything. You just go to the website and it'll pull whatever the most current version of the asset bundle is. As I mentioned before, there is a simple form. It's given the time constraints that we had, again, it was about 3 months from start to finish. We just were using Google Forms. It's nice and easy. Unfortunately, the language had to be a little daunting. So that's going to be a process that we'll have to kind of continue to refine when you land on the form. You know, you have to have some of these more obligatory things like a statement on ownership, usage, and services. We also have to have a reminder about the Virginia Tech principles of community and the standards that we're going to expect. So the ingest process as it relates to the form, I think we'll have to continue to refine as we work with community members and they let us know, you know, how is it working for you or how is it not? We have had a few submissions so far, which is really exciting. This one we had from a student who wrote that they have, they created this artwork to express the principles of community at Virginia Tech with 5 principles being represented by different colors, and they each swirl together to hold up the world. So big hopes and dreams represented here in this one sculpture. I was very excited to see this come through, and this is one of our earliest ones. For our future development goals, as we mentioned before, we have some outreach goals that are really kind of are a big priority for us right now. And then on the development side, we have some more technical, nerdy, fun things, but we're really excited about. We really want to implement a tagging system that relies on the metadata of the sculptures and will allow you to kind of sort through them. So when you join the virtual sculpture garden, you can say, rather than just seeing the sculptures as they were placed in just relative to when, you could say, show me all the stuff from just the Virginia Tech Science Festival. Show me all the stuff from just alumni, or show me all the things that are just about cats, the ever popular topic. We also wanted to start including things like animation support so people could have their sculptures be moving, as well as audio files so that there could be an audio component, whether that be a music or an oral history, to really tie in the digital humanities component of what it means to take advantage of a space like this. So with that, that's our presentation. We want to shift over to an actual walkthrough of this virtual sculpture garden. You can all get there, by going to this link here. I can paste that in chat if you want to review that later. There is no cost, no special software is required. You just go to that URL and away you go. Oops, let me make sure I'm still sharing my screen. All right, so we'll hop on over. And on the page itself, we have some welcome information. We also have a tutorial on how to carve your own 3D pumpkin that we did to promote for our Halloween event and for the Virginia Tech Science Festival, and then some instructions on how to submit. Getting down into it, can you all hear the music? No. Let me try sharing my screen again, and this time see if I can
hear
share
it now.
Audio.
Can you guys hear it?
Oh, that might just be coming from on your end.
Oh.
Yeah.
Share screen options. Let's see.
Let's see. It should be.
Share computer sound. All right, here we go.
You got it. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear that now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And I'm actually going to launch this full screen so we can really appreciate this. And so that audio track was the song that I mentioned that Alice composed. It takes a minute to load sometimes, as the file can be pretty large. And it's normal to experience a little bit of load time, so things might be a little slow when you first join. But we've got some basic instructions here, and yeah, this is the garden.
Cool.
As I mentioned, for Virginia Tech Science Festival, we met with Dr. Yates's class, 6th grade class, and we were teaching them about 3D. So we went over a lot of the same things that we talked about today, and animated some simple explanations. And you see here, like, all of this is built from simple shapes, so cones and spheres and things like that. And that's our encouragement to try out the pumpkin carving. And then once you come out here and then just go on and explore. So right now we're still collecting submissions, so the world feels a little empty, but as I mentioned, as we collect more sculptures, we really start to fill out, and we're already talking about lots of new ways to do that, both through art and oral history, as well as a few other things. Here we have a big golem creature, and when you get close, you can look at this orange dot that's right here on that podium, and that'll tell you the information about the golem, or the artwork, as well as the artist. And they pop up all over the place. So the hope is that eventually, we'll have this space really filled up. And one of our next development goals is to allow for different sizes. Right now, they all have to kind of exist in the same, roughly the same size. But we'd love to see some that are, absolutely enormous and stretch to the sky, or very small you have to kind of walk up to really add variety to the space. Yeah, so that's the guard right now. And then the next thing I want to do, if I can, is go to this link, and I'll share this in chat as well. Let's see here. So when I go to this link, I wanted to also do a quick demo to show you how quick and easy sculpting can be. So when you land on this page, once again, this is totally free. You don't have to make an account. You don't have to install any software, and it can run on most computers.
Nice.
So you'll land here and you'll see this this clay sphere. And if you can see, I have this red circle that pops up on the sphere wherever I'm kind of hovering over. And if I click on it and I drag, I can actually build up the clay. And if I go over here, you can see there's a negative. So I can either click that or just press the Alt key. And if I press that, I can then just push into the sphere. So just like that, we can kind of start playing around. And what I did ahead of time for that, the science festival, was I went ahead and made a pumpkin, just a basic pumpkin, not carved yet, and then just created that tutorial video so that you can come in here and start really kind of just carving yourself a pumpkin. I like to start with the eyebrows, and if we hold shift, we can smooth it out. And then I like to so you go ahead and punch in those classic spooky pumpkin eyes. And you can see very quickly, we can change the size of the brush so you can see the scale of the circle changing. So if I make it really small, I can go ahead and carve in a little nose. And very quickly, I'm also coming over here. Right now you see everything I'm doing is symmetrical.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn off this symmetry. My brush a little bigger again, and I'm going to go ahead and just carve a lopsided, fun little mouth. And just like that, you can see how fast how fast you can kind of play around with this. And when you're talking about the advancements in the 3D technology to really be able to explore, this is really what we mean. So you don't really have to worry about all those numbers or all those buttons. You can kind of just start having fun. And over here, I have a tool setting that says brush. If I change that to paint, get all these new options, and I can pick a new color. So I want to, I don't know, let's see, I'm going to give them a little bit of blush. And I can come in here and add a little bit of that right there. It's a little hard, it's a little, I want it a little bit softer. So there we go. And can just start kind of painting that on. And I can change this to white to get some eye glow. And yeah, very, very quickly you can see that we can start pulling this together. And with a little bit more time and some practice, you can go ahead and create, let's see, where did I put that? Well, I had a pumpkin prepared, but the pumpkin that I cover in my tutorial, this right there. So you can go ahead and, you can really spend some time and add some creases and some cracks and some blows around the eyes. And what's really fun about that is then once you're done, you come over here to Files, and then if you click save.sgl, that downloads your pumpkin, and then you can send that to us in the garden, and then we'll put that in the garden for you. So it doesn't have to be a pumpkin. We're heading into more winter time, so maybe it's more of a snowman. Let's see here. Maybe, I don't know, add a coal eyes and start working on your carrot nose.
There we go.
Yep. So yeah, you can really start to just kind of start having some fun. I'm going to give him some cheeks. And yeah, I think you can see how quick that all kind of comes together. So with that, I will say thank you for giving us so much time and letting us talk. And we would love to hear what kind of questions you have, or if you would like to see anything else in particular. Can we download an image from the web and modify it into art? For the Sculpt GL, that tool I was just showing you, let me go back to it now. This is a free tool. We did not make it. They're not affiliated with Virginia Tech, so big disclaimer. But it is open source, and we really appreciate the artist who put this together. I do not know how to. I currently do not know how to save just the 2D image. What you can do, and what I've done for myself, so this is just an image, obviously, that I added some text to. And so what I did for that was I just took a screenshot. So that would be either, what is that, Control-Shift-Command-4. There's a screenshot snippet tool on Mac that you can use. So I just did a screenshot like that. On PC, it's on Windows, it's just the print screen button. So I just grabbed a screenshot of the screen and then pasted that into Paint or another tool. And then so you can use that to make your 2D art. So that's kind of my recommendation. There are a lot of free tools out there. Many of them will allow for easier 3D to 2D conversion. You can even do things like download an app on your phone that allows for augmented reality viewing. I just realized I was gesturing and I was still sharing screen. So you could download something to your phone to allow for augmented reality viewing, load your sculpture into your phone, and then your phone will show it projected into the world that you're in the real life. So you could actually have it appear on your table or on your mantle. And, or if you wanted to, you could send it to Newman Library. We have a 3D design studio, and we offer free 3D printing. So you could send in that same file. You would want to download a .stl for that. But if you reached out to someone and said, which file type do I need, they would help you. But you can send in your file, and then you could 3D print the thing that you made in this program. So that's one thing that's so amazing about the 3D art making, is that you can really add lots to it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Can you take a flat image and lay it on the object? Yes, that is a fantastic question. That is called, there's different terminology for it, but the basic approach is called unwrapping. And let me just go ahead and share my screen once more. This time I will show my whole desktop. So mind the mess of my folders, I apologize. what I can show you is in that the sculpture garden, there is a sculpture that represents the different kinds of 3D modeling. And I mention this because the 2D image wrapping is exactly what we did to make that possible. So if I walk over, so you can see there's this paintbrush right here. Everybody can see that. There's a tube of paint and some paint on the ground, and then this paint brush stroke that swirls around. And so that's 3D geometry, kind of the same that we saw in the other program. And the way that I painted it was I took this 2D object, this 2D painting, and then wrapped it around that 3D object, which is a little brain melting in a certain sense. You have to kind of think about things in a very strange way, but it's a lot like, it's actually a lot like if you think about a map versus a globe. You just take a map, which is a 2D projection of a 3D object. So we made maps the other direction, where we took a 3D object and we made a 2D image out of it. But you can go the other way as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I had a question about the one sculpture, the early entry you mentioned and showed us a picture of that around with the world. So obviously, was that a 3D printing of the 3D artwork, or can you take something you've created physically and then also turn that into a 3D sculpture?
In that instance, that was a 3D rendering that they created using the program that they had used to model. I believe it was Fusion 360. And they were able to apply basic materials and add a camera and then just render it to look like a real object. And that's what they sent in to us to say, it's supposed to look like this. If it doesn't look like this, it's not right, which I asked for because we had some difficulties with the import process. But to your question about can you make a real object and then bring it in? The answer is actually yes. And again, when things become a little bit more in person, and I hope maybe spring of next year, shortly after, there will be a 3D scanning service available through the 3D Design Studio at Newman Library, where you can bring in an object and then have that 3D scanned. And they use it looks like an iron, only on the flat part of the iron, there's something like 17 cameras or 9 cameras, and they're all oriented different directions. And so they kind of wave that over the object, and it gives them a point cloud where they take all of the cameras in all of the known spaces, and then kind of cross-reference the locations of where all of the different points on that object are appearing and where they all overlap. And then that gives you a very surprisingly accurate, surprisingly high fidelity 3D scan. There's a very high-end version of that called 3D photogrammetry. And that's something that a team at the library does they're currently working on a grant for the entomology department. There's a very, very large bug collection that they're working through scanning that are full of extinct or very endangered species of native Virginia and regional bugs. And they're trying to preserve them for future generations to be able to study. So, yeah.
That's cool, because I would think with that kind of technology, you could even increase the amount of entries into the garden if there are artists out there that sculpture in other media.
Absolutely.
So that's great.
Absolutely. And there's one thing that I would really like to explore is the 3D scanning is time consuming and it's kind of difficult, and you have to bring your sculpture in and you have to sit there and work with it. So it's not really a very scalable solution at the moment. But one of the things that we're really interested in is figuring out, exactly like you said, what other options can we come up with to lower that barrier to entry even further. That could be something like essentially like an origami kind of challenge, where we take a 3D object that we made, we origami unfold it into that 2D map, like we were talking about a little earlier, and then you can print out a paper, draw on it, or crayon, if you're, crayon, paint, whatever, and then take a picture and send it back to us. And then we'll take your 2D image and then rewrap that around our 3D object. So now you have colored a 3D object on paper, however you may have wanted to do it. And that's kind of probably the easiest, the lowest barrier version. But that might be a project for next year.
Yeah. No, this is, I think, what you've been able to accomplish in such a short period of time and creating this whole environment is amazing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It's funny because it does feel, there's a slide on there that says how it started, and that's kind of one of the things that you asked us to talk about. But it kind of still feels like how it's starting right now, and we still have so many ideas for things we want to move forward and what we would want to do. And a lot of for me, one thing that's been really exciting is being able to talk with groups like yours and say, what would y'all want to, or what would you need to get started? I don't know if we can offer a winding design.
Yeah.
I know how popular those are, though. So
virtual, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I suppose if you, you bring what you want and leave it off camera, and we just won't ask. Yeah.
Right. This is true.
I think Beth had a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a statement that I'm really excited about this. Back in the mid-70s, I worked at IBM Research to do 2D modeling and morphing and those sorts of things. And then in the 80s, worked with the early object-oriented programming in a company called Symbolics, building three-dimensional images for scientific use.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have now gotten to the point where any of us can get on and build things is just really wonderful. So I really appreciate what you've done.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. I think one thing, it's interesting because when I talk with my friends, so I went to school for 3D modeling, and when I talk to a lot of my friends who work as 3D modelers in the industry right now, it's so much just the art for them that they actually forget kind of how much math and science and research went into it, and the fact that it was really pioneered by polymaths and PhDs and leading engineers across the world.
Working out the ability to morph a square into a circle back in the day. It's really very complicated, and I worked hard on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I bet. Yes.
I'm sure.
Never
Yeah.
done before.
Yeah. And it
I
must
think
be. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think your idea of offering how-tos to use Sculptgl would be something the community would be interested, and to be able to learn kind of more nuances and how to use it, and would help generate interest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What's the relationship between this and 3D printers?
So 3D printers, you can think of it kind of the same way as your home printer and a photograph you might take. So it's very much the same relationship. So the 3D printer prints the file that you create in a 3D art program. And where the virtual sculpture garden comes in is it's much more like, I'm trying to think of anything other than Facebook, but it's much more like a social sharing platform. It's a virtual art gallery, really, right, Renee?
Right, correct. Yeah.
Just throw you onto the spot.
I know. I was like, you got me at Facebook. I was like, oh yeah, Facebook. Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of Facebook. Yeah. Just without any of the commentary. Yeah, so the relationship is more like, you would use something like SculptGL, that tool I was using to model the clay. You use that to create the art. You would use the 3D printer to print it and then have it exist as a real object. And you would use the virtual sculpture garden to display it for everybody to be able to see, no matter where they are in the world. So that's really what we love about the virtual sculpture garden. I think for me, I'm really interested in the idea of the land grant mission of Virginia Tech, and this idea that we should be giving back to our community. And there was the Beyond Boundaries initiative that started over the last several years, which is how can we take that land grant mission, those ideals, and spread it past Virginia, take it way outside. And I think one of the things that are really great about this kind of technology, about virtual reality spaces, is that you can be anywhere in the world and access this, as long as you have access to the technology, which is a whole other can of worms for sure. But yeah.
But
going, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You gave your biographies that many of you were attached to the library system.
Yes.
Virginia Tech library system.
Yes. So myself, along with Alice Rogers and Jonathan Bradley, all work at the University Libraries at Virginia Tech, and Renee works at the Moss Art Center. That really felt like a great pairing to us. The libraries is really about this idea of sharing knowledge and creating a space for people to come in and explore new ideas. So that's exactly what we felt like fell in line with this. And Moss Art Center, I mean, Renee, you could talk about that if you would like, but.
Yeah, no, definitely. I really was enjoying being part of this project, and the idea was at one time, is hopefully when the Moss Art Center opens back to the public, is to have this be incorporated into one of the exhibitions and really just reach that audience as well. And back to your question about the printer, the 3D printer, it is really easy to just drop off the file and have it printed, and to have something actually print that you created. I wish I had it with me, but I actually 3D printed one of the bees that I created in a program. Cool. I had it printed, and then I painted it to make it look like a bee. Unfortunately, it is in the other room, and I don't want to try and run and grab it. But no, it's very easy to use. I mean, you just drop off the file, they have it printed, and they'll let you know when you'll be able to pick it up. So I'm trying to answer both of those questions for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I often kind of forget, I'm so close to this, I often forget how wondrous it can be, and how surprising it is that it can be so easy, especially things like the 3D printing that's available through the library. As Renee said, it really is, you walk in, you give them the file, and then they say, great. And then they'll send you an email when it's ready to pick it up. It's usually, depending on how busy they are, it can be a few hours, a day, a week. But they have 14 3D printers, and they all run continuously. So they create a lot of prints through that space. And students use it to do stuff like make cell phone holders so that they can watch TV at their desk. We've seen someone do a dish drying rack. So they 3D printed a little drying rack for above their the sink in their small space. And we've seen professors use it to print. One of the coolest examples that I always go to is a professor printed a scale 3D heart valve of a dog, so they could show this is what a healthy dog heart valve looks like, and this is what a heart valve that has some disease looks like in these dogs. And that way, those are fabulous teaching tools. So they can just pass that around and the students could actually pick it up and go like feel it and touch it and then and really understand what are the mechanisms at play and why is one so affected by this disease and the other, like what's actually happening.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I know for my thesis, I was actually thinking about creating honeycombs out of the 3D printing. Money-wise, it wasn't the most effective, so I went with wood and laser cut. But yeah, there are so many possibilities to do with 3D printing. And, you know, once you do have it printed and you have already the object, as Trevor said, you know, enter it into the 3D sculpture garden. Then you could you could tell your your grandkids, your parents, your friends, like who don't live here, hey, go to this site, and now you can see what I just did.
See what I did. And I think one component of the virtual sculpture garden that we really do want is we want there to be a space for artists to create just breathtakingly beautiful works of art. But we also want there to be a space for people who just want to doodle on a piece of clay to do that as well. And we think that with the virtual sculpture garden, we can find space for both because we're not limited by a physical exhibit space. It's theoretically infinite.
I think it's a great opportunity too I'm glad you mentioned like K through 12, because then you're starting at an early age, school age, to get interest in, you know, fine arts and or, you know, the technology to be able to work on that. And then as an aside question, kind of somewhat related, I'm just curious your viewpoint. We're talking about 3D printers. When do you think that will become affordable to the mass population? They've been out for a while and it just doesn't seem like it's gotten there yet, but I know it takes time.
It's kind of surprising. You know, we know about there's and it's going to be a kind of an ever bigger issue, talking about things like access and equity for children and families at different economic levels. I think it's really going to it has the potential to create a really big divide, but we've seen it happen I've seen it happen just in my time at Virginia Tech. I have worked the orientation table a few years for freshman orientation, and as well as 1 year worked the orientation table for the library for prospective students, so students who were still in high school who were just coming to check us out. And one of the things that I noticed just in 4 or 5 years, it went from us saying something like, yeah, we actually have free 3D printers, and people would go, whoa, you have free 3D printers? That's incredible. And just a few years later, we had students, freshmen, who were entering Virginia Tech going like, yeah, well, I already have one at home. So it's kind of funny you say that. You know, I think it really depends on your level of access and kind of what you have. Lots of high schools are getting them now. And even the virtual reality rooms, Jonathan Bradley has worked with local schools to start creating virtual reality rooms within the schools. So, you know, these are K-12 schools that will have virtual reality headsets for anyone to go in and use. So yeah, I think that's access is not a problem we have tried to start to think about how to solve among our team, but it is a very big problem, and I think it will need to be addressed. So that was a very long-winded way of saying, I don't know, some people have them already, some people don't.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like attached printers and that kind of thing. I guess, you know, it was just so expensive early on. And then now the prices have come down so much that, you know, it's affordable for a lot more people to have that. Yeah.
All right, well,
anybody else?
More questions?
It doesn't seem like it, but again, thank you, both Trevor and Renee. This was just very, very fun and
very interesting.
Exciting. Yes. And we'll spread the word. We'll spread the word. And, you know, we've recorded the session, so we'll be sure to we post that on our website. And I'm sure there'll be other members who couldn't be with us today that will want to go ahead and watch it when they have a chance. So
Yeah,
Wonderful.
maybe in the future, as you said, a wine and design
See, there, absolutely.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. If, if
What
you,
a dream
if-
come true.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you ever think about that, or please look us up, and I'm sure a few of us would want to go ahead and participate. So.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so very much. Y'all were a fantastic group to spend a Thursday afternoon with.
Yes, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
You too. Happy
You
Thanksgiving.
as well.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Take care.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.